Now, we've been in court for almost 4 weeks. What do you think some of the strong points in the state's case is?
Well, I think the neighbours, what the neighbours have heard with regard to the screaming, shouting, and the shots being fired. I think that is very important insofar as the state is concerned, because they want to say there was an argument, because I don't believe they're going to be able to prove premeditated or planned murder. They would rather be arguing that there was an argument between the couple and that Oscar lost his temper, went to get the firearm, Reeva moved away, gone, hidden herself, as it were, behind the toilet door. And that fits in with what the state's kind of adding on about his temper. I don't believe these SMSs and the communication on the cell phone between the two has a great deal of relevance. On its own, it's probably meaningless. I mean, many couples argue and say stupid things in communication with each other by way of cell phone. But I think the state's saying, well, that's that little bit that we're adding. He is a person who loses his temper. He's irresponsible. The same with the firearm incidents in Sasha's restaurant and in the motor vehicle. They're using that to try and show this character of Oscar as being aggressive. So those are little bits and pieces that adds up, but the main evidence are the neighbors. And that is very important evidence, because there's no reason why they would have lied. They don't know him. A lot of them are professional people. They may make mistakes, for example, as to the sequence maybe and how many shots they heard. But in general, aren't all of them really saying that there was a man and a woman shouting, screaming, a woman screaming, and then shots were fired, or a shot and then screams and then further shots? So there may be some differences between them, but I think that stands out very prominently. The forensic evidence, I don't believe on its own, and even if some of it's excluded because the crime scene may have been tampered with and the evidence might have not been properly dealt with, that can be criticized. But I don't believe that's crucial, even if it's excluded. You do have the ballistics expert, I think, who gave good evidence about the shots and which shots hit Reeva, the grouping of the shots and the sequence of the shots, as it were. I think that's good evidence. I don't think that was cracked under cross-examination. And then don't forget, you've got Oscar's version, which is it was his firearm. He shot 4 shots into a very small area. And even though he's saying he thought it was an intruder, if that version is rejected, the court can draw an inference that he knew it was Reeva and that he intended to kill her. Or, if you look at it from the angle of, let's say it's established that he did believe that it was an intruder, the court accepts that, are you allowed to act the way he did with shooting 4 shots? And that could also, through the door, into a small area. And that can also be murder.
We've spoken a little bit about the forensic evidence that the police contaminated at some points. Could that be a weak point in the state's case?
Well, as I say again, if you exclude all of that, that doesn't bring the state's case to its knees at all. It's not like a situation where a fingerprint found on a firearm is crucial to link a suspect to the crime scene and to actually using the firearm. Oscar admits using the firearm. So because the fact that there was no gloves used, that doesn't affect the state's case. And some of the other evidence about the photographs and whether there was somebody else taking the photographs and whether some of the items were moved around, shown on the photographs. Yes, the crime scene may very well have been contaminated. We know Botha, who wasn't called, but during the bail application said that he arrived, he didn't have the necessary boots on and gloves on when he was dealing with the crime scene. It could have been contaminated, but it's not one of those cases that rests wholly and solely on forensic evidence. That is there to an extent, but the state's case isn't built just on forensic evidence. Some cases could be a drop of blood, nothing else. A fingerprint, nothing else. And that could be crucial if it's been contaminated. So I've said throughout, forget about that, the forensics to an extent. And even if there was contamination, it isn't going to knock the whole case. I think the defense is trying to say, well, look, because there's contamination and the police messed up the crime scene, that means that Oscar didn't get a fair trial. In other words, exclude all the evidence. I think that is taking it a bit far. I don't believe there's any basis to argue that one can exclude all the evidence. Some of it, which may not be crucial, can be excluded, and I think it may very well be on the forensic side, but the rest, the witnesses, the neighbors, Oscar's anger and the way he behaved previously, build that all up. Circumstantial evidence and drawing the inference, and the court must draw as the only reasonable inference from all that circumstantial evidence that he had the intention to shoot Reeva, or if he had the intention to shoot an intruder, he can also still be convicted of murder.
Well, it's going to be very interesting to see what the defense says.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're all looking forward to hear what Oscar says. And I think it's going to be very tough for him to testify. The eyes of the world will be on him. I think he's going to have a very difficult time. And I think the prosecution is certainly going to attack him on many of the aspects that he will raise and that he already raised in his bail affidavit.